Hello, it's Greg Watford again, and welcome to this video in which we've called it Who Are You? Have you ever wondered what personality type you are? Um, I'll give you some examples, a couple of examples. When you're growing up, let's say that you were the little sister, and your brothers, your bigger brothers, were always out there and rough and tumbling and having fun, where you were the more reserved. You played the piano, you liked reading books in your room, and you also kept your room nice and neat and tidy, where all your brothers made a big mess and you couldn't understand why they were that way. Another example is, let's say you've got a 2-year-old. When your daughter was born, and she's 2 or 3, she's always around your feet, hardly gets any sleep, demanding attention. All seems to be demanding attention all the time, and your whole day is spent entertaining her instead of getting on with what you need to get on with. Where your friend next door, who also has a 3-year-old, who plays by herself, she plays with her dolls or colours hour after hour. She's happy with her own company, and you're a little bit envious of your friend because your friend seems to have a normal life, and when yours is all turned upside down. How about where you work? You join the company with someone, and he's very flamboyant. He's out there. You join at the same time, but he seems to be getting all the attention, maybe all the notoriety, and he's friends with everybody, and he's organising parties or organising projects, and you know that yourself, you're smarter than him. You do a better job than him. You're getting those reports in on time. They're meticulous in how you've done them, etc. So you feel that you should be getting promotions ahead of him, and maybe you're not. And you think, well, why is that? Why can't I be out there and like him? And I'll give you one other example regarding promotions. Some years ago, my wife Wendy and I had a communication company, and in that company we had a service department, a department, and in that department we had several people, and one of them was very good. He was very dependable. He was everybody liked him. He was great. He came to work, did his work, stretched himself regarding his hours. A really, really top person and a top employee. Now, the supervisory team leader position became vacant, and we like to promote from within, so I promoted him into that position. And it really didn't work. He had trouble leading the team, setting goals, getting the staff, motivating the staff, and getting them out there. And even though he was technically very, very good in what he did, his heart really wasn't in that position. And basically we had to demote him back again and find someone else for the position. And I've always thought with that, why did I make a mistake? It wasn't entirely obvious that he couldn't do the job, and he was pleased enough to go and to get into the job. It was promotion, more money, prestige, and he was doing the right thing by the company. And yet basically he was not happy in that position in his heart. Okay, so look, there are 4 examples of where personalities come up in day-to-day life. So in this video, if you stay with me, I'm going to walk through some basic personalities and how they fit in with you. And I think you'll enjoy this. Okay, so let's start with, we'll just go over here, and we're going to start with, okay, Myers-Briggs. This is the most common one that you'll find within commerce and industry. Myers-Briggs, it was a mother and daughter. It was Catherine Myers and Isabel Briggs during the war, Second World War, and they actually studied Jung, and they put together this program whereby they could identify jobs and slot women into those jobs. It was a time when women had just started to really get into the workforce because there was a lack of males to do these jobs, and they were looking for comfortable and effective jobs that would meet the requirements of these women. And they put together this test type indicators they call it. I believe it was revamped in the 1960s, and even today there's something like several million people take a Myers-Briggs test around the world every year, either this test directly or a modified version of it. Personally, I find it a little bit too complicated. If you have a look with all those coloured squares, there's 16 personalities, and for my way of thinking, 16 personalities is too much for me to remember. So I've even though I've done the test myself years ago with an organisation I started working for, and it's a bit too complicated for me. So look, there's another one that's used throughout business, and this is what's called the DISC test, and you can see there they've narrowed the personalities down to 4 categories: dominant, inspiring, supportive, and cautious. And so you'll find some organisations will use this DISC type. Now, just before I get on to this last one, because this is the most important one here, one thing I just wanted to mention to you: when we're looking at the personalities, just be careful that you don't start judging or categorising people, putting people into a box because they're in this box, they're this and that. I try very, very hard not to categorise people, and Wendy and I have found over the years, by understanding the personalities, it helps our relationship, it helps us as a person, as people, and it helps us in our interactions with other people. We're not categorising and not just boxing people up and just sticking a label across their forehead. It doesn't quite work that way. It's a tool to help you get through life and business with relationships. Okay, all right. Now, Florence Littauer, we met her. Wendy and I met her in the I think about early 90s, mid 90s. Quite a remarkable woman, married to Fred. Florence Littauer now is in her 80s. Fred died in about 2002. They were married for many, many years. And Florence Littauer is famous for the book that she produced in the 1980s called Personality Plus. Now, one of the good things about Florence, she could talk, and I've heard her tell stories about how she actually started, which I'll just relate a small bit to you, just to give you an indication of where she was coming from. She was, I think she came from Massachusetts. He was, I think, old money out of somewhere like Philadelphia or something like that. They met I think, at university. She's a school teacher in English, and he ultimately was a businessman, I think, handling money for the family. And she was very out there, very flamboyant, colourful. The personality is what's called a sanguine, which I'll talk about in a minute. So she was a really out there person, and all her students absolutely loved her. So when she got married, the students actually organised the wedding, and it was a really big affair. And even Life magazine came out and photographed it. This was in the early 50s. Now, Fred, on the other hand, was the exact opposite personality. He's what's called a melancholy, melancholy is not, I'm very depressed. Melancholy is a type of personality that is slightly introverted, but actually a bit of perfectionist. So Fred was this perfectionist, and he thought that he could actually change her and tidy her up, her sanguine, messy ways, and she thought that she could lighten him up because he was so heavy and he liked reading lots of books. And I'll just tell you one story. There's lots of stories about it, but I'll just tell you one story that is good, and I'll give you an idea of where they came from. On their honeymoon, so you can imagine this, on their honeymoon, they're in the Caribbean somewhere, Bermuda or whatever, and Fred has taken all his books with him on his honeymoon, and he's preferring to stay in the hotel room and read. And she, of course, is out there meeting people, swimming, having fun, and really enjoying herself. There was a scene where she comes home to the room, and she opens the fridge, or she takes out, I think she takes out of the fridge some grapes, plonks the grapes on the table, and starts ripping into the grapes, as you do, and chewing away on these grapes. And Fred looks up over his glasses and said, "What are you doing?" And, "Well, I'm just eating grapes." And he said, "That's not the way to eat grapes." And she said, "Well, what's the way to eat grapes?" So he walks over, and being the melancholy that he is, he pulls out of his pocket a nail clippers. And he said, what you do is you clip off a bunch of grapes, and then you sit there and eat that little bunch of grapes. If you keep going the way you're going, you'll end up with all spikes on the top of your grapes, and it's all messy. So that's how they started their marriage. So after a period of time, they got to the point where they almost divorced. Now, both Florence and Fred are Christians, and they prayed a lot, and they were led to Hippocrates, as in the Hippocratic Oath, as in 2,500 years ago. Hippocrates had discovered there were 4 personalities, and he named the personalities after bodily fluids. That's where you get these funny names from. So once they actually got onto that, not only did they fix their own marriage, but for about 20 years, they ran this counselling business where they fixed everybody else's marriage, because all these husbands and wives were having fights and couldn't figure out why they're trying to change one another. So let's have a look at these personalities. You can read her books and get more of the story on that. So there she is, Fred and Florence. Great couple. So there are the 4 personalities. If you start in the top right over here, she called it the powerful choleric. Some people pronounce it choleric. Apparently, the correct pronunciation is choleric. So the choleric is the leader, the person that's out there and doing stuff and wants to lead the team and get on with it. And normally got a pretty sharp tongue as well. Over here's the sanguine. Now that's where Florence was. Lots of colour, sanguines, very popular. People love being around sanguines. They're always having parties, and normally they can't work on their own. Sanguines like to work with other people. So down bottom left is where are we? Down here, bottom left is the peaceful phlegmatic. Phlegmatics are really a lovely personality. It's sort of like oil on troubled waters. Phlegmatics don't like conflict. So if you ask someone, hey, do you like having a fight with someone, they say no, I walk away. 10 to 1, they're phlegmatics. So peaceful phlegmatics are really great. Everybody loves a phlegmatic. They're normally pretty quiet, but they're very reliable and very nice people to get on with. And the one on the bottom right, now the last one, is the perfect melancholy. Melancholies are normally very detailed people. There could be scientists, musicians, and the like. Your accountant, 10 to 1, your accountant is a melancholy, especially if you walk into his office and find that he's got everything neat on the desk. Everything is in order. It's definitely a melancholy type personality. So now one of the things that with these personalities, there's 4 of them, but you're never just one. It's very rare to have a personality with just one, all choleric or all phlegmatic or all melancholy. Normally you're one and a bit of the other, or a bit of a second, all right? And the last 2 over here normally don't count particularly. So this is the way that I look at it. So from there, it's okay, when you do the test, you'll end up understanding that you're predominantly one, you're always predominantly one, and there's always a secondary. Now, these are innate personalities. These are not what you've learned. It's, the nature and the nurture. Well, this is the nature, and this is what you're born with. Deep inside here, you're one of these personalities, and then you've learned to cope in the world, and you may have built the strengths of the other personalities to compensate for some of the weaknesses that you may have. Okay. Now, you're never balanced, by the way. You try to be balanced, and it's look. Just to give you an example, is someone, let's say a sanguine, like Florence, someone who's a sanguine and really out there. They tend to be pretty messy, and because they don't worry about it, they have Florence has got a huge bag. It's a colourful bag, and you open it up, and it's got everything in there. It's sort of like a filing cabinet, just tipped in there. So you never find anything, scratches around it. That's Florence. Yet you can have sanguines could become a nurse, for example. They could learn how to be neat and tidy and everything in its place. But deep down inside, no, they're just having a fun in life, So I just thought I'd throw that one in. Okay, so you're never balanced, but you're trying to actually compensate for some of those things that you're lacking. Okay, there's another way of looking at it, and you can go around the outside of these. Now, normally you don't go across. You only go around the outside. For example, I'm choleric melancholy. Okay, so choleric, I like telling people what to do, and I've got a sharp tongue. And melancholy, down the bottom right, is, when I get this pointer to work, doesn't want to work. There we go. Melancholy meaning I like to have everything done right, but I don't like everything to be done right because I'm not a really heavy melancholy. I'm just a little bit of melancholy. The other two, phlegmatic and sanguine, I haven't got much of. My wife Wendy, on the other hand, is not the exact opposite on the square, but on the exact opposite. She's a melancholy choleric. So she's very, very good at what she does. She's been my PA for years, and she does it very well. The old term was secretary. So she does that very well. She likes having everything done right. Okay, so that's predominantly her melancholy. Now, choleric, she tells me what to do. The cholerics do this at times, but that's okay. We've been together a long time, so we're used to one another. We can handle it. Okay, but that's where it comes from. Okay, so I just thought I'd tell you that. Our son, for example, he's across the top of the square, so he's choleric, sanguine. He's a party person. Okay, but the choleric in him, he likes telling people what to do, and he also likes telling his old man what to do too. So the choleric in me and the choleric in my son, boom, boom, boom at times. Okay, so but we've both matured, so it's not so heavy at that. Regarding going around the outside of the square, let's have a look. Across the top, the popular sanguine and choleric, or choleric sanguine across here, are often people in front of a television camera. Okay, they love, okay, I'm here, everybody, and the choleric likes, well, the politician likes telling people what to do. Where down the bottom is the creative, the melancholy, or actors are often melancholy, even though they may play sanguines and extroverted sanguines. When you see them interviewed, a really good interview, you find they're introverted and maybe a bit pessimistic, and so they put on this mask to become a choleric or sanguine, but really deep down they're a melancholy or phlegmatic. So you go around the square. You can never go across the square. I've always said if you go across the square, you're sort of a bit screwed up. Maybe that's right. I don't know, but generally you go around the outside, and often in your partnerships with people, you're on the opposite side of the square. Now, Wendy and I are a bit unusual to be on the same side. We're on the right-hand side of that square. But generally, if someone is a choleric melancholy or melancholy choleric, they'll end up being married to a sanguine or a sanguine phleg, for example, and vice versa. So it's generally people who get attracted to opposites. But I think Wendy and I must have been old souls in a previous life. So okay, so let's have a look at more detail in these personalities. I'll just go through the four, so it'll help you understand a little bit more about it. So the choleric, it says here, the choleric walks into a room and takes charge of everything. You know, on the Titanic, they'll be putting everybody in the lifeboats. An extrovert, no nonsense type of person who doesn't deliberate long or over details. That's a pure choleric. Now, just bear in mind that you're mixed. So it's for myself, for example, being a choleric melancholy. The bit of the melancholy in me, I like things to be done properly. Where if I didn't have much melancholy, I'd say, nah, let's get on with it. Next project. We're looking at the end of the goals. Sanguines, that's what I said was Florence. Sanguine grand entrance. Ta-da! I'm here, everybody. How are you? We're going to have a good party, aren't we? It's like that. And colourful. Anybody with lots of colour. They talk a lot, lots of colour, and they got lots of people around them. They're warm and loving. Right? They tell funny stories that are centre of attention. Yes, me. Let me tell you a story about me. It's great. Okay. And phlegmatics, really nice people, peaceful person, easygoing, happy-go-lucky, wanting to stay out of trouble, right? Doesn't like conflict, and getting along with everybody. Enjoyable to be around, laid back. Okay, doesn't get too excited. Okay, and the last one is the melancholy. As I said, it's typically is the accountant, the engineer, the scientist. Often it's the musician, the actor, who wants everything done properly and in order. A systematic, detailed person, often analysing, etc. Okay, reserved and sometimes introverted. Okay, now look, one thing to bear in mind with any of these personalities, you have strength and you have weaknesses. Okay, for example, myself, my strength is I can lead and teach. My weakness is I become pretty abrasive. Well, I'm working on it, and a sharp tongue. Well, I can remember growing up and cutting people in half. You know, it's especially phlegmatics and go boom. And I didn't know. I mean, I thought, oh, that's just the way I am. But now I realise, yes, it is the way I am, but it's a weakness, and I needed to actually address it. So what I'm saying to you is if you get Florence's books, and I suggest you do, and we'll talk about it in a minute, you'll find there's strengths and weaknesses for each personality type. And, of course, what you want to do is improve your strengths and mitigate your weaknesses, compensate for your weaknesses. Okay, so they're not negatives. Don't look at them as negatives and positives. They're just strengths and weaknesses. We're all different, okay, in this world, which is great. It would be terrible if we're all the same. Ugh, how boring. Okay, so just remember strengths and weaknesses. So, which I'm not going to go into that detail because it's fully covered in Florence's books. Okay, now some people have actually got these four personalities out. They put animals beside them to actually get the picture. So the lion as being the king of beasts, the leader or whatever. The otter's always having fun. The golden retriever is always sitting at your feet, man's best friend. And the beaver is always busy, doing working perfectly and building their dams or whatever. Another way of looking at it, which I think is pretty good as well, is the birds. Eagle for the choleric, the peacock. The peacock's flashy. The dove of peace, right, for the phlegmatic. And the owl is the wise owl. You know, is just think about your accountant. What if he's a good accountant? And so that's the wise old owl, as it were. So I thought that was pretty good. Okay, this is what the test looks like. And I'll give you these links at the end, by the way, so don't worry. This is what the test is, 40 questions. And if you have a look, see across the top end, question 1 says, are you adventurous, adaptable, animated, analytical? Now, of course, if you're the accounting type or a musician or whatever, you'd be analytical. But basically those 4, what you find is 2 are way out, but you may be 2, and you've got to just concentrate, okay, which one would I be the most of, right? So then you go put a 1 beside it. How I did this, I found it far better to have someone help me, a good friend, my partner, Wendy, to help me. What am I really like in this question, etc. So once you answer your 40 questions, you end up finding out where you are in the scale of things. So look, let's answer those questions that I posed at the start. There were four at the start. Now, if you remember, like the first one was regarding you growing up, and we had the little sister and the big brothers. The brothers were out there, always rough and tumbling and having fun, and messy bedrooms and running amok. And the little sister, more artistic and playing the piano, neat and tidy room, lots of reading of books and a quiet, and also not liking conflict or arguments. If there's any arguments in the family, over the dinner table or whatever, she would actually run off to her room and bury her head under the pillow. You know the answer now. She's phlegmatic. And of course the boys are sanguine cholerics or choleric sanguine. They're at the top of the square, and she's basically at the bottom of the square. She's probably she's probably phlegmatic, melancholic, and she's more studious and more artistic. And they're just rough and tumble boys at the sanguine cholerics up at the top. So that's the reason why they had those. We've categorised them, as it were, and then once we've categorised it, you can identify, okay, what's the strengths and what's the weaknesses of each of those, and then adjust it accordingly if you want to go that route. The second one example I gave you was having a little baby that's taking up all your time, and you feel as though you have to entertain her for the whole of her waking life. And it's because she is choleric, sanguine, or sanguine choleric. She's top of the square. Okay, she demands your attention. The demand is the choleric, and the attention is the sanguine. Party. Me. Let's have some fun, and doesn't like to be on her own. Doesn't like her own company. The little girl next door loves her own company, of course, because she's down the bottom of the square. She's melancholy, melancholy phleg or phleg melancholy. It's just a quiet person, studious, likes doing the drawings, playing with her dolls, playing by herself, happy with her own company. Definitely is down the bottom is a phlegmatic personality, really, and also to some extent melancholy. The next one I gave you was being at work, and yes, it can be frustrating at times where you see people that are out front and seem to catch everybody's attention and seem to be promoted faster than you are. And the good business people will identify the personalities anyhow, and you won't really be passed up. But it may seem that way because that other person that joined you on the same day and is doing a similar job to you, he's the one that's always out there and gets the accolades, where you're diligently working behind, doing the beaver work sort of thing, and behind the scenes doing your job properly. So by identifying your weaknesses and your strengths, you can amplify your strengths and minimise your weaknesses, and be able to step out there. It gives you something to hang your hat on. Why don't I like talking to people? Well, the reason is that's my innate personality not to talk to people particularly. I prefer my own company. Like, how can I overcome that? And the last example was the person that I promoted, and for years and years I couldn't understand how I made an error in that, because he was just what I thought was a neat fit for the job, for the supervisor's job, the team leader. And look, the bottom line is everybody loved him. He was a phlegmatic, and he didn't like telling people what to do particularly. So when I put him in the role of telling people what to do, and of course that does bring up a little bit of conflict from time to time with customers, clients, and also staff, he didn't like it. And so basically, it should have been a choleric melancholy on the right-hand side of the square, or on the top of the square, a choleric sanguine to go into that position. Would have been more adaptable to go into that position. But that being said, and I think I mentioned it previously, you can learn the traits that you're looking for. You don't. He could have learned. We could have sent him off and done a tertiary type course on supervisory skills or whatever, and he probably would have done the job. But really, in his heart, he didn't feel comfortable. So that's why we pulled him off anyhow. So that gives you a little bit of a clue. We've looked at those 4 examples, and I'm sure that that'll help. It'll sort of work some things out, and I do hope that you can identify with some of those examples. Okay, let's finish off now. How does this, what I've just covered with you in the last 24 minutes, how is this, how can you adapt it into your life? What can you do with it? So I'll just give you a couple of examples of what you can do with this information if you get really into it. Personally, I find it very interesting to look into these personalities. Some people say, so what? I'm just the way I am, and yeah, that's fair enough, but that's okay. Number 1 is, if you understand your strengths and weaknesses, you can adapt and change and grow. That will help you in your relationships with your spouse, your children, and those at work. Okay? So that you could even, for example, it may be able to, at work, you may be able to get a promotion faster. Because you've adapted and modified and looked at your weaknesses and improved your strengths, and it allows you to get a promotion faster. If you run a business, for example, it would allow you to understand your staff and be able to slot people into the right holes, into the right positions where they feel more comfortable, they will be more productive, the business grows faster. Okay, so these are the sort of things that you can use these basic personalities. You don't have to go into it very deeply. Just go and read Florence's books. They're easy read, and you'll be able to understand a little bit more. I'll make myself a note here. Okay, so look, okay. The other thing is home-based businesses, because that's where I'm coming from now. Wendy and I run our home-based business. It's an affiliate marketing business regarding Carrot Bars Gold. So how can I use this information that I've just seen, listened to, in regarding building a home-based business? And here's what I suggest. If you've really never run a home-based business before, and now you're stepping out, okay, I'm going to join Greg and Wendy, for example, in this affiliate business. Well, as you're going to start off your home-based business, because you'll be working at part-time before you go and work at full-time. How can I adapt my personality in building that business and make it work for me? Okay, look, if you're a choleric and you're used to running the show at work or whatever, and you're at home by yourself, the only person you've got to run is you. You may find that a little bit difficult, a little bit daunting in the end. Be okay in the first a little while, but once the honeymoon period is over, maybe it's a bit lonely. Well, definitely for sanguines. Sanguines love people and are not keen on working on their own. So if you're a sanguine person, you like dealing with people, you interact all the time, you're in sales at work, and you just love getting on the phone and talking to people. So here you are on an internet marketing business at home by yourself. And it can be very lonely until you build a big network in the beginning, in that early period. You could be very lonely. Phlegmatics, a bit hard to motivate yourself perhaps, because you like the routine of going to work 9 to 5 and you know exactly what you have to do. So a phlegmatic doesn't have to think about, okay, I'll just do my job and I enjoy it. But now I've got to motivate myself. I might find it a little bit difficult to do that from a phlegmatic's point of view. And a melancholy, want everything done perfectly right. When you build a business and you're going to be interacting with people, because even though it's an internet marketing business, you're going to be talking on email, on Skype, on videos, on the phone, you're interacting with people. So as a melancholy, oh, do I have to talk to people? I don't talk to people at work. I'm in accounts at work, and I just do the books. I do all the bookkeeping, and I don't want to talk to people, but I want to build an internet marketing business. So there's a bit of a conflict there. So once you understand your strengths and weaknesses around that square, that will definitely help you with building a business and feeling more comfortable in a home-based business. Okay. Look, one last thought that just popped into my mind. With these personalities, especially kids, if you get your kids onto this, this is really cool stuff. But just be aware at this point. Your 15-year-old daughter, all right, who's a sanguine and out partying all the time, being a sanguine doesn't give her permission to have an untidy bedroom. Okay? Your 14-year-old son, who's a phlegmatic, it doesn't give him permission to sit on the lounge and watch TV all day, every day. Okay, so you can tell them that for me. All it is allow you to understand you've still got to play by the rules. Tidy your room and turn the TV off and get out and do something. All right. Look, I do hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to provide lots of links below this video for you to give you further resource material to have a look into this. And there's also going to be a link to my website. It's called Profit Through Gold. And if you enter your name and details into that, I'm sure that you'll enjoy some of the videos that are in there. And I look forward to having further discussions and maybe meeting you down the track. Okay, my contact details. Also, yeah, info@carrotbarsgold.com.au. So it's info@carrotbarsgold.com.au, and you're quite welcome to send me an email. All right, I hope you got a lot of value out of this. I had fun making this for you, and I look forward to having a chat with you in a future video. Okay, bye.